Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again, everybody's favorite segment here on the channel, Power Rankings NFL style. We got week 9 coming up. Starting tomorrow, we got Pittsburgh versus Tennessee, which is going to be an epic kind of game. We'll talk about that in a sec, but we're going to go over a little bit of each team, a little bit of what happened last week, and a little bit of what's going to happen this upcoming week coming into week 9. If you're not new to the channel, you might notice I'm trying two different things here. I got a microphone. It's been a long time coming, and we got a new camera, so hopefully you catch some sort of difference in all of that being said. Hopefully the sound works and all that. Otherwise, guys, if you're new to the channel, we do these every week. Comes out on Wednesday. Baseball is usually our big thing, and the World Series is coming to an end, so football is going to take center stage. Still talk hockey, so if you like that kind of stuff, join the Discord, subscribe to the channel. We do this all year long with sports. Sports are the channel. All right, let's jump into it. Number 32, we got a new team in the bottom of this week, and I got the Arizona Cardinals. Pretty interesting week for them. They got smoked by Baltimore, kind of. They actually even had a chance to win the game when they played Baltimore. It was a long shot, had to be 2 onside kicks in a row. They got the first one, didn't quite get the second one. They have an interesting week coming up as well, playing Cleveland, a team that a lot of people aren't quite sure what they're all about. So right now I do have them in 32nd. They did trade Dobbs away at the trade deadline. Kyler Murray may be playing this week, maybe not till next week. So we'll see what they're capable of going forward. Right now, it's a big question mark. We don't know what they're capable of. They look terrible. They've been kind of set to be that team all season long. And number 31, they seem to be making a little bit more progress than the Cardinals are. Carolina had their first win of the season this past week. Coming off a bye week, they played Houston, and it worked out well for them. It was a pretty ugly game, of course, but they won it 15-13. They had to kick the field goal twice at the end. They got it done. It's a team that I like their defense a lot better than the Cardinals, at least. They at least have one side of the ball that seems to be working very well for them in that defense. And I think Bryce Young, they're going to start letting him loose a little bit. He might make a little bit more progress. I do like the future of Carolina right now to be a bit better than Arizona. Why I do have them number 31. Number 30, this team could arguably be any of these bottom two. New York Giants just looked absolutely awful. They blew a game that they should have won. They missed a field goal, and then they somehow let the Jets walk down the field and score a game-time field goal, lose it in overtime. They're now under their third-string quarterback in that game, Tyrod Taylor going down. I think Daniel Jones might be coming back this week, but the Giants have so much wrong with them right now. They are not the team they were last year, and it really shows. They're going to have Vegas this week, but that's pretty much all they can hope for is to play another disgruntled team like Vegas. Next up, we got the Green Bay Packers. They lost to the Minnesota Vikings. The best damage they did this past week was they took Kirk Cousins out for the season, which pretty much might ruin their division rivals' season. But the Packers offense just can't seem to get anything going whatsoever. I think they lost 24-10. And this upcoming week, they are going to be playing the Rams. Again, another team that maybe in the past they might have matched up pretty well with, but I still think the Packers have a long way to go. This is going to be a long rebuild, I think, for the Packers. Number 28, right ahead of them in that NFC North, we got this Chicago Bears. And after what looked like a somewhat exciting win against the Las Vegas Raiders the week before, they got absolutely destroyed by the Chargers in this past weekend. Well, do we really expect much to be coming out of them with their quarterback situation going on? They probably want to see Fields get back. Really, he was starting to maybe step into some sort of role. But at this point, Chicago not going to make the playoffs. They're a team that's really fighting to find an identity, I think. While some weeks they look absolutely the worst team in the league, there are weeks where they somewhat look okay. And I think that's what puts them in number 28. Number 27, another team. The New England Patriots, just a tough week, of course. They had the Miami Dolphins as their counterpart. They got beat pretty badly, 31-17. They are going to be playing Washington, a team which I think they are favored at home by 1 point right now in this upcoming week. But the Patriots, they're pretty clearly, I think, the worst team in this division. Had Rodgers not gone down, for certain, they would be the worst. But maybe they're fighting for the Jets right now. But they don't have a lot going for them. Mac Jones, probably big question mark around him. They'll probably be looking to draft some sort of quarterback or address that situation going forward. Patriots are going to play out the rest of the season. Of course, like any other team, they might be able to make some headway. They do seem to do all right against the teams in the bottom tiers. And for the other times, they do have some upsets up their sleeve, as we saw 2 weeks ago. Number 26, we got the Las Vegas Raiders. And really, maybe I could argue them even being worse, but they have shown times where they can do something. They've cleared house, just I think announced today. Daniel's gone, GM's gone, quarterback Garoppolo, he's going to be benched. So this week coming up, they have the Giants. It's going to be a very interesting spot. We saw them get just pretty much embarrassed on Monday night against the Lions. So I expect them to have a step up week this week. Usually when this kind of thing happens, coaches get cleared out, everything. The players seem to get some sort of momentum, at least for 1 week. And what better time than to get some momentum than a crappy team like the Giants. Number 25, we have the New York Jets. They're playing the Chargers this upcoming week. They just had that game I talked about with the Giants. If it wasn't for this defense, this team would be 0-16. But they are on their way to possibly a winning record, and there's signs that Rodgers somehow is going to come back this season. I find it really hard to believe, but he's out there throwing before the games. He's doing that. If they can keep around 500 until he gets potentially back, they might push him and kick him there. And maybe we're talking playoffs for the Jets, but I want to see what they're going to be like. They're playing a tough opponent like the Chargers, and I do expect them to start losing a little bit more here. They have had the luck of the schedule, at least in their favor, a little bit, playing a lot of these weaker teams while they're away, and they managed to steal that Bills game, but they still have a lot of work to do. Number 24, I feel like this team is just a little bit ahead of the Jets. I know they did lose to the Jets, but Denver had a nice game against Kansas City at home, and they really showed that. I think their offense is at least doing a lot better. Their defense has shaped up a lot better over the past couple of weeks, and I think there's a lot more promise based on their roster, based on Russell Wilson, than the Jets have, at least of moving up. That's why I do have them ahead. I know they played head-to-head, but that's kind of why. Broncos, long way to go. Like, this team's clearly in rebuild too. Trade deadline's over. There's not going to be any improvement. They can't win the division at this rate. Really, can they make the playoffs? It's going to be a long shot. Number 23, team that just completely started selling off there at the trade deadline. We saw Chase get traded. We saw Sweat get traded. It's pretty interesting that they're kind of throwing in the towel. They lose to Philly, so they go 0-2 against Philly this year. They managed to keep those games relatively close, and their offense showed promise when that was happening. So a little bit of something to look forward to. I expect Washington's going to really want to address this offensive line. Will Howell really be the guy of the future? It's going to be tough to say, but at least they're trading at the trade deadline, so I think it's safe to say they gave up on the season. Number 22, we got Tennessee Titans, and with Levis going in there at quarterback and picking up a massive win against Atlanta Falcons, I wasn't ready to just completely switch my thoughts on Tennessee. I do think they have some work cut out for them, and the first step for them really proving that they deserve to start moving up this board is to beat Pittsburgh on Thursday. Pittsburgh's going to be a little depleted, so we need to see some momentum. One game isn't enough for me. Tennessee had a lot of problems, but Hopkins, he had that breakout week this past week, and if they can continue to keep that connection going and somehow pick up some wins, we're going to see them moving up the middle of the board, and they're going to be fighting for the playoffs at least. Right now, I still don't really consider them that. Number 21, I do have the Minnesota Vikings. Guys, let's say, this team wouldn't be this low if it wasn't for the Kirk Cousins injury. That really, to me, took their tires and just slashed them all up. They were on a momentum. I really liked the momentum they were going, and had he not got injured, they had a massive win against the Packers. I would have them probably up in the middling row. I would even consider them as a potential playoff team at that point, but until we see Dobbs come in there and be able to run this offense, I do have a ton of concern, obviously, when this kind of thing happens. So I want to see it. I want to see the next couple of weeks before I really make my judgment call on what this Vikings team is now, because right now it's a big question mark. So I think 21 is sufficient, arguably. Number 20, we got Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off that bye. They played the Buffalo Bills on Thursday. So now they have a bunch of time off, and they're going to be playing a team that they match up very well with the Houston Texans. We're going to see. They started off 2-0. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers team really struggled over these past number of weeks. Baker Mayfield seems to having issues. Does he really have what it takes to be in the NFL? Browns would say no. The Rams would say no. So maybe it's time for the Buccaneers to make a decision. We're going to see it. It's going to be interesting because they are playing number 19, the Texans, this week. So really these guys are playing for their lives on the power rankings. I think they match up super well, and that's kind of why they are where they are. I didn't drop Texans. I think they're in the exact same spot as they were last week due to that loss to Carolina because, first of all, teams that are winless coming out of byes have shown in history to be massive, especially when it comes to the spread, but like they just come out. And they matched up pretty well. They had a great game. It was a defensive battle. I think those teams matched up very well. Realistically, when we're looking 19 through 32, the NFL is pretty tight, right? Anyone can win on any given Sunday. Carolina needed to win a game. They weren't going to go and match the Lions and all those guys with the overs. So Carolina picked up their one win of the season and didn't hold it too much against the Texans. Number 18, they've fallen down the board quite a few spots over the past couple of weeks. The Rams just did not like what I saw when they played Dallas this week. They got absolutely blown out. They managed to score some points by the end of the game, but overall Stafford looked rough back there in quarterback, and it's really going to show that they're number 3 in this division, and it seems to be pretty clear at this point. Whether they can make the playoffs, I think it really helped out their benefit that Vikings got hurt there, the Washington's giving up. Like, there are teams that are pretty much giving up. The NFC seems to be a little bit weaker on the bottom side of it. So maybe that's going to work out in the Rams' favor. Maybe they'll take that number 7 seed. Right now, number 18 overall in the NFL. 17, we got the Indianapolis Colts. Pretty insane game these Colts have played the past 2 weeks. First, it was Cleveland 2 weeks ago. Then it was New Orleans this past week. Their defense just seems to not be able to stop the ball lately, but their offense seems to be getting it done. So it's a mixed bag with this team. Not quite sure how to put my finger on it. Right now, I'm tending to lean that their offense has enough weapons that Gardner Minshew can maybe score points and keep them in any game, and really they can compete with most teams. 17, I think, is all right. Are they going to be able to go on a massive win streak? I don't think so. So I think 17, pretty fair for those guys. 16, Atlanta. They play Tennessee. They play Minnesota this coming week. That's going to be a big indicator about what these two teams are about. Maybe I have Atlanta too high. They've been really struggling since their trip to London. Drake London, questionable. What's going to happen there with him? Can Riddler even get this team going? Seems a little questionable. They did bench him halfway through the game this past week, and I don't know. I didn't check in to see what's going to happen in terms of that going forward. However, Atlanta, they're right there on that borderline. Are they going to take a step forward? Are they going to take a step back? To me, they've clearly dropped into the second spot in this division, and Tampa Bay isn't too far behind. It's going to be interesting when those teams start to play each other. Number 15, I do think this is a pretty big difference compared to some of the other teams that are beside each other. Like these guys, I do think the Saints have a little bit of an edge in this situation right now. They played a pretty awesome game when it came to playing Indy. It's almost as if that first half against Jacksonville 2 weeks ago really kicked them in the butt, and they're ready to take some steps forward. Saints, I do think the offense, Derek Carr and all them, are starting to get it together. We've got to remember, the first early parts of the season, they didn't have Kamara with the suspension. Maybe took a few games to get going. They seem to have the momentum now, and now they play the Bears, so they should be able to build off that momentum and take it going forward. So I like what the Saints are doing right now as they climb the board. Number 14, we have the Cleveland Browns. This team is just wacky, just to say the least. They lost to Seattle this week 24-20, and they got an easy game they should at home against Arizona coming up. This one that they should win in a division that they've played pretty tough. This line in the power rankings is weird because to me it's a lot of teams that seem to be doing better than they might otherwise be, and that Cleveland Brown kind of capitalizes on what that is. But they're managing to get wins. Their defense is super strong, and somehow PJ Walker's keeping them in games, especially against teams like Seattle. Got to be something to be said about that. Number 13, dropping a few spots with an ugly loss to Jacksonville. I think the big staple coming out of that, obviously, Kenny Pickett out. Will he start this week? Steelers fans are really, really hoping so because Trubisky looks awful, and he will not be able to carry this team any farther up these rankings If anything, they'll be falling further down. Pickett was looking all right, though. I think they were in that game with Jacksonville. It was 1 touchdown's difference and a couple field goals, and they're right there in it. So I don't hold too much weight into the second half of how that game went. Steelers are still one of those interesting teams that still can't seem to quite figure out, but their defense has been playing out of their mind. Number 12, we got the Seahawks just playing pretty great, especially at home, taking that win off Cleveland. Got to be excited about that. I do believe they're in first place in their division right now. I want to see what they're like when they start playing again in their division against like Rams, against the 49ers. We saw them play Arizona recently, but I want to see those games. I know they played the Rams early in the year, and I want to see them. I want to see them play some tough teams again and see how they react to that. They're playing Baltimore this week, and that's going to be a big impact. If they can come off with an awesome performance or even a win, we're going to see that reflect in these power rankings. Number 11, Chargers. I didn't really move them this week. They took care of business playing the Bears. It's going to be interesting on the road against the Jets. Can they continue to take care of business? That was a big question mark for them. They've had a rough start, of course, and they've always been battling back, but they're definitely a good team. And without Williams on the wide receiver, they've really got to force feed Allen, and we're going to see if the other threats can really pop up for them. Number 10, dropping a couple of spots, even though they had that big win over the weekend on Monday night. The Lions, they've been pretty interesting to watch. They were pretty sloppy in their win against Vegas. Didn't get a whole lot of confidence. They took a lot of field goals early, and they just couldn't seem to score in the red zone, so there was some concern there, especially when they start playing some better teams. What's going to happen there? I think they're going into a bye week, so they're probably going to stay in the top 10, especially going into next week as well. But enjoy the rest, Lions, because the rest of the season is really going to show, are you guys finally a playoff team? Number 9, we got the Bengals moving on up with a massive win over the 49ers. I think it's starting to be that the early stages of the Bengals that we were concerned about no longer need to be concerned about as much. Offense starting to get going. They put up 31 points against the 49ers. Got to be pumped about that, especially seeing Joe Burrow. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the league when he's not hurt, and seems to be the case that might be now. Number 8, I got the Miami Dolphins. Not moving them up, not moving them down. They had a win where they should win against the Patriots. Talked about it last week. We'll continue to talk about it until we see something else, which could be this week. The Dolphins have not really beat a team that is worth beating. Other than the Chargers first week of the season, every other team is in this bottom row essentially. So we want to see how they face up. They're going to Germany. They're playing the Chiefs. Might be a chance to pounce on the Chiefs because Mahomes had the flu game and now they're traveling overseas, so he still could be wound down. So this might be the chance for the Dolphins to really make a statement. Number 7, we have the Bills. Some people might question this, but I really wanted to leave it to this week. They took care of business on Thursday. They beat the Buccaneers, so I'm going to keep them in the same spot. They're playing the Bengals this week, which to me is going to be a really defining game for how the Bills season is going to go from here. They've struggled a lot. There's been ups and downs. They've lost to teams that you really didn't think they would, and then they blew out teams, and then they beat teams like the Dolphins. So they're one of those that's all over the place. But on paper, and when Josh Allen's at the top of his game, they're clearly a top 5 team. So I think 7 is justified as of right now. Number 6, I think they've lost 3 in a row now. So really dropping down the board. I didn't want to drop them too much because I still think they're top in the league, top in the NFC. They're just going through a little bit of a rough patch. Brock Purdy has never really had to deal with this in his career, so give him a little bit of leeway here. But the leeway is going to be short. They're going into a bye week here, so some rest. How they play coming out of this bye week is going to define the rest of their season. These teams are they're yapping at their heels, so they got to be ready to adjust and make changes. And of course, they made some of that, but at the trade deadline, looking to bring in some talent. Losing to the Bengals sucks, but they had worked up a nice lead in the division. Sure, it got erased to the Seahawks, but we still think they are top there. Number 5, I think possibly the highest this team's ever been in power rankings ever for us. Jacksonville Jaguars, they've been on fire, and they took care of business against Pittsburgh. They were tight with Pittsburgh in the power rankings last week. I talked about the importance of that game. Their defense really stepped up. Of course, once Trubisky went in, didn't look super impressive, but at the same time, it's the NFL. Got to be impressed with it. The offense is getting things done. They're going into a bye week after a big win. They deserve it. They've had an intense start to the season, especially with the London trip, coming back, still winning. Jacksonville Jaguars got to be excited for where they sit. This division should be theirs for the taking. Number 4, moving up a spot, we do have the Dallas Cowboys. And honestly, they're playing top 3 potential as well. Like, this team is not to be underrated right now, smashing the Rams over this past week. They're going to have a fun test, and that's what's really going to be, to me, whether they break into the top 3. They're playing the Eagles this week. Are they going to make a statement that they should be the division champs possibly in this division, or are they going to be kind of 4th, and where we're used to seeing the Dallas Cowboys looking good but not quite taking that step to be elite? That's why I got them number 4. Number 3, Ravens, sticking in that same spot. Not going to read too much into this past week at all. They went into Arizona, they won. Got to be pumped about that. They were covering the spread, up by 10 points, up by 14 more for a long time. Little bit of an ugly way to finish the game. Shouldn't have had to sweat it at all, but they won, and I'm not going to talk too much else about that. Playing the Seahawks, the Birds, it's going to be a fun game. I'm excited to see how those 2 teams match up, especially how the pass rush and all that Seahawks have created deals with Lamar Jackson. It's going to be fun. Number 2, dropping out of the throne, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Little bit of the beginning of the season questioning going into this too. Mahomes losing on the road at Denver. Sure, he might have had the flu game going, but they did not look good whatsoever. Now they're traveling to Germany to play a tough team in the Dolphins. So I think it's pretty easy to say right now that the Eagles are the top team in the league. They just keep pushing their way into victories, and we saw it this past week with Washington, although we saw them alternate off the tush push, a fake tush push, I guess you could call it. But Eagles up there at the top, the best record in the NFL right now after the Chiefs lost this past week. So there you guys have it. New camera, new microphone. I'm talking a mile a minute over here. It's hot in here with the ring light on and all that fun stuff. But I love talking about this stuff. I love talking about all these teams. I hope you guys enjoy watching these videos as much as I love making them. But let me know. Keep the conversation going. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Where am I completely out to lunch on here? I know there's somewhere. There's always somewhere. But where? Let me know. Otherwise, guys, we'll see you for that next video. World Series possibly ending tonight. Could be exciting. If you're into that, watch it. Otherwise, peace out, boys.